I've always likened it to Gilligan's Island, like the 3 hour tour that turned into a lifetime of what the hell. Um, in a nutshell, here's my story. Um, we left San Francisco, took the 5 days to get to Hawaii, sailed around Hawaii for 5 days. On the way home, we encountered some rough seas. Um, and then a couple days away from Ensenada, we had to go to Ensenada because it's a foreign port, and that's the way the world works. If you go from here to San Francisco to Hawaii, you stop in Ensenada. If you go from San Francisco to Alaska, you stop in Vancouver. They have to hit a foreign port. So anyway, a couple days out from Ensenada, we were told we had to quarantine ourselves in our room, which meant that's it, we're in our room, period. The upshot of that was, thank God we had a balcony room. The people across the hall weren't as fortunate, so every once in a while when the doors would open, we'd let them look out, at least see what the weather was like and get a little bit of fresh air. We did start making kind of friends with people around us in their cabins. Princess did bring us things to do. They brought us playing cards, coloring things to color, picture frames to put them in, I don't know, whatever, a bunch of things, but they made an effort to keep us occupied. They did increase the TV package. Normally it'd be like maybe 8 different or maybe 15 different programs, but maybe 3 episodes of each one. They increased it to like 12 episodes of each one because they know everybody's in their room watching TV for the most part. They gave everybody the free internet package, so that was pretty good. We already had it, so ours was uninterrupted. But when we had bought the package for 15 days, so when it ran over, they just said, "Oh, log on till end of cruise and it'll be fine." So we watched a bunch of movies. They increased the number of movies they had. They did all that to make it more or less stressful or more palatable or whatever to be locked in our rooms. The they did feed us 3 times a day. At first, we had an abbreviated menu, like 3 items for pick for breakfast, 3 for lunch, and 3 for dinner. Pick one of each. And then it got to the point where you got whatever they brought you, which was fine because we knew they didn't have enough food for for much more than 2 weeks. They don't stock enough for a month, and so they were running out of food. We got a lot of stews and goulashes and stuff. It went reasonably well. Let's see. Somewhere along the line, they slipped a questionnaire under our door if we had been coughing or felt ill or whatever. And Judy and I both put down, we had a small cough a couple of days out of San Francisco. So when we hit Honolulu, we went to a CVS, got some cough syrup and had it a couple times and we were good. But we put that on the questionnaire, which bit us in the butt later, but more to that later. Sometime in the next day or so, we had a couple of guys with hazmat suits come and knock on the door, and we're talking full-blown hazmat suits, the ones you see in television, like Silkwood when they had a nuclear meltdown. They're all white. They've got a white helmet or thing on their face with a plastic grid or a plastic shield on there and everything. And they interviewed us also. And they were going cabin to cabin. So we made the best of it as we could. I mean, we played cards, we watched television, we read, we downloaded some books to our iPads, played games as best we could, stayed on Facebook, posted stuff, otherwise occupied ourselves. And the decision was eventually made to bring us back to our room, for backup, our room was 214 square feet is what I looked it up to be. That included the bathroom and the shower, because if you take a room, stick a queen size bed in it, and a little desk and a couple other things. There's not a lot of room to move around in there. It was pretty small. Like I said, they delivered meals 3 times a day. They'd knock at the door. You go to the door. There was a tray on the floor, and you took whatever was there. They gave us beverages and stuff. We still were able to order room service. We ordered wine occasionally for dinner, and Judy was fortunate enough to order a bottle of vodka, which came in handy later also. And that was all well and good. We got updates from the bridge. The captain on a number of occasions tried to convey to us what was happening. Basically, what he said for the most part was, apparently between the United States Public Health Service, CDC, and CMAT and DMAT, or whatever all those initials were, those acronyms, they couldn't figure out who was in charge and what they should do. At one point he said, I'm trying to get some information from the people on the dock. Apparently whoever's in charge changes every 10 minutes, and I can't even find the people I was talking to before, and the new people don't know what's going on. So I'll let you know when I know, but until then, they're not telling me anything. Which didn't make any of us, or at least didn't make me feel more comfortable about the situation. Like, if nobody's in charge and it's like nobody's planned for this, nobody's thought about this ahead of time, has a game plan, really? It just seemed odd and less reassuring. When the time comes to disembark, those of you who've been on cruises understand this, the longer you've been with the cruise line, you get certain perks. One of them is priority disembarkation, which means normally on a cruise, we're one of the maybe first 6 groups to leave because we've had enough cruises with them. And they gave you colors like red 1, red 2, red 3, blue 1, blue 2, blue 3, silver 1, silver 2, silver 3, whatever. And then they'll call red 1, please report to deck 4, which is where the gangplank is. And if you have a red 1 tag, you get to go down there, and they put all your luggage off to the side, and you get to go pick it up and scatter to the 4 winds. When they started calling those off, we were pretty happy with it because we figured we're going to be the first ones off. However, when they came to our color, which was like silver 1 or whatever, they said, with the exceptions of cabin B214, C726, and C823, you can report for disembarkation now. Well, one of those cabins was ours, so we got to stick around longer. And we figured out later it's because we answered truthfully on that little questionnaire that, yeah, we did have a cough 2 weeks ago. And so we waited and waited. Eventually, I think Judy called down there and they said, oh, you can go ahead and go. So we left, grabbed our carry-on, because they'd taken all the other luggage the night before. We grabbed our carry-on and backpacks, walked down there and got in line with everybody else because social distancing wasn't a phrase at the time. And we're chit-chatting with people, what's going on? What do you think? What do blah, blah, blah. And because there's not a lot of news channels on the cruise ship. There's one out of England and something else, but you never know what's going to be on there. You don't get a variety and then get to make up your own mind. It's like, well, this. And so eventually we make it to the front of that line. And we got off the ship and they funnel you into a tent. Now in the tent, there's 4 government workers. One person asking questions and writing down information. They'd ask your name, your date of birth, and the state you reside in. The other person would copy the answers. So I guess that's their way of making a copy. One person would talk, and the other 2 people just looked at them like they were doing something. Just watched them do this information. Then we got on a bus. Fortunately, we were towards the front of the bus. That comes into play later. And on the bus, they had sandwiches, they had water, they had air conditioning. and it was like a big Greyhound bus. And so we get on slowly, the bus fills, and then a lady comes on who had been taking the information and says, "Is there anybody here from Georgia?" And two ladies in the back raised their hand. So I guess when they were writing the information and somebody said Georgia and they wrote GA, they didn't stop and say, "Hey, maybe you should stand over here." But anyway, they got on. They said, "Well, let me check, because this bus is just for California residents." So she got off the bus, walked back and forth in front of it a couple of times, didn't really say anything to anybody, got back on and said, "Oh, it's okay." So we sat there for quite a while longer. And then they finally let us leave the dock. And as we approached the gate, we were stopped again. And the bus driver talked to somebody there for a while, and they ended up backing up the whole way there because now the people from Georgia had to get off. And the lady came back on and said, "You're going to have to leave." And the lady said, "We don't want to." So people were quite upset with that and yelling at him, "Get off the damn bus." And so eventually the people from Georgia, two ladies from Georgia, got off the bus and we were allowed to leave. Um, while we're on the ship, Princess sent us a notice saying, "If you need any meds, let us know what they are," because nobody packs for a month worth of meds on a 2-week cruise. So everybody filled out forms. I was fortunate in the sense that because the way my pill dispenser worked, I had like 20 days of pills. Um, Judy was not so lucky or fortunate. So she filled it out, and I believe they got her meds while she was still on the ship. Trying to think if there's anything else. Okay, then we leave the gate, head to Travis. Now, we got on the bus about, I don't know, 6:30. We left our room at 6, got the bus at 6:30. It's a 25, we had all checked our phones. It's a 25-minute ride to Travis from the dock. And we got a police escort, which was nice. There was not much traffic at that time of night, but it was nice. Get to Travis about, I want to say 9 o'clock, maybe a little later. We were told when we pulled into Travis, we would be on there until midnight, on the bus until midnight. So we sat on the bus until midnight because there were buses ahead of us. And the way they were disembarking was each family or group, like husband, wife, kid, whatever, or a single traveler, got off one at a time. You weren't allowed to just disembark and stand there. I'm not sure the reasoning for it, but that's the way they were doing things. And so we were on the bus. It was kind of an interesting microcosm of society in there. The people in the back were roasting, so the air conditioning had to stay on. And the people in front, where it worked really well, were freezing. People kept arguing, "Turn it on, turn it off, turn it on, turn it off." One time the guy came in and turned it off. So the people in the front were fine. The people in the back were roasting because there was no ventilation at all back there. And people were complaining. And at one time I told somebody, I said, "There's 60 people on the bus. You can't get everybody to agree on what is hot and what is cold. If you're cold, bundle yourself up. And if you're hot, try not to take off enough clothes to annoy somebody." There's just so much we can do here as a group. And people weren't used to being inconvenienced. We eventually got off because we were set up near the front because we were some of the first people on there. We set up near the front. We were the first 2 or 3 people to get off. By then, this is midnight, so we've been on the bus since about 6:30 and been at Travis for at least 3 hours. Judy went and answered some questions because they'd bring me off, like Judy and I, you have to go fill out some forms, check this, sign this, go answer a bunch of questions, and then they'd give you a room key. Well, my bladder was ready to burst, so I went in and took care of that, and Judy had gone through that. She told me, the lady said, "We have one room left here and it's got twin beds in it. And Judy says, it's a room with beds. I'll take it. So we got the last room at the Air Force Inn or whatever it is at Travis. They have a big inn or hotel or whatever there that visiting people whose sons, daughters, loved ones, or whatever are serving, when they come to visit, they have a place to stay as opposed to staying at the barracks. It's a nice place. I mean, all in all, for what it is. They also had some outlying cottages or condos um, that went to people, I guess, who got there later or earlier. I'm not sure how that worked, but they were away from us. We had at the Air Force Inn there, we had 900 people from the cruise ship there. And like I said, not everybody is used to being inconvenienced. They didn't go on a cruise to be inconvenienced. They sure didn't expect to be inconvenienced later. They, when we first got there, we were fortunate that as we walked over to get interviewed and sign up for the room and everything, we saw our bags. So when they gave us a room key, we walked over and got our other luggage, took it with us up to a room, and away we go. We met another couple in the elevator who had gotten there the day before us and kind of told us how things worked and whatnot. By the time all 900 people were in Travis, it was a zoo. The first day or so, when they fed us, they would just bring the food into the lobby and hand it out. Well, people being people, people were hoarding it. They go, "Oh, give me 3 of these," or I got other people in the room, and then the person in the room was right behind them getting 3 of those. So they felt they needed 6 because they thought they weren't going to get fed anymore. I don't know what the story was. They had a refrigerator in the room. They had a microwave. They had a coffee maker of sorts. But people were hoarding food. It was just in social distancing by then. People weren't buying into that at all. You try and space yourself out, and people were just it was a mess. After day 2 or 3, they finally got a grip on it, and they put notices down there in the lobby saying, "We will bring food to your room." So that kept people from congregating in one place and blowing that social distancing to smithereens. So what would happen was about 7 o'clock in the morning, you get a knock on the door, open it up, and there's 2 people to take your temperature. They have the little gun pointed at your head. One person asks your name, takes the temperature reading. The other person writes down they have a list of who's in what room, and they would write down the temperature. So they kept a log of that so they could see any spikes or deviations. They'd take my temperature, they'd take Judy's, and then sometimes 5 or 10 minutes later, somebody come around with the morning breakfast. They did this for lunch and they did this for dinner. They didn't take a temperature at lunch, but they did it at dinner time. The food, I want to give a shout out to Hannibal Catering or whatever it is, Sacramento. I think they did a fantastic job. You had 900 people 3 times a day. That's 2,700 meals minimum, because they also fed the staff there, I'm sure. And they did it for 15 days. Do the math. It's a boatload of food that they transported from Sacramento to Travis, and they kept the hot stuff reasonably hot and the cold stuff reasonably cool. Like I said, you had a microwave, so if it wasn't as hot as you wanted it, put it in the microwave, zap it, you're good to go. But the food was good. We had all kinds of different varieties of stuff. In fact, I called Hannibal the 2nd or 3rd day to tell them what a good job they're doing. Being in the restaurant business, I understand the behind the scenes and what a show it has to be to handle all that. And the lady I talked to said they were given less than 12 hours notice that that's what they were going to be doing. She goes, I had to call my crew. Some had just gotten home, turned around, drove back, and we've just been, cranking it out as best we can, getting the food all together, getting it prepped, getting in the boxes, getting those sealed up, getting those in the containers, getting, I mean, it's a logistics nightmare for, like I said, 900, probably, let's call it 1,000 meals because you feed the staff. 1,000 meals a shot 3 times a day. That is an accomplishment into itself. Also, by the second or third day, the people that were there running the place had gotten a system down in place too. They were all public health service and CDC people. They were not restaurant, hotel managers, stuff like that. Most of them were in the medical field. Um, there was a guy there were doctors there. There were, all kinds of medical people. One had a degree in microbiology or something. Um, as near as we could tell from talking to some of these people who became temporary friends at best, they sign up for it, they do some training, and then when there's an emergency, they call them up and say, let's go. So they weren't working at the time, or they may have been, but they were told, okay, it's like the draft, your number's up, let's go. One of the ladies who delivered food to us was from Virginia. She was an ER trauma nurse. I'm not sure delivering food was using her skills the best, but like she said, this is what they wanted me to do, and that's I signed up for. And let's face it, there's a good chance I didn't need an ER trauma nurse there, but she was volunteered and donated, or didn't donate her time, but was there to help. Most of the people there, if you treated them nicely, they were very nice in return. There were some people who thought they were still on a cruise ship. They were jerks. We were standing behind, as you go down to the lobby to talk to them to get whatever you wanted to get, there were people, you had to stand 8 feet, they had it taped off, you were 8 feet back from the desk, and you'd tell them what you wanted. And there was some guy ahead of me complaining that nobody had been to his room to pick up the wet towels on the bathroom floor. And the guy had to explain to him, and there won't be. You're in quarantine. That means nobody goes in there. Nobody. Housekeeping, nobody. If you want to wash your laundry, there's a couple of laundry, washers and dryers on the floor, like at any hotel. And the next day they had boxes out there with towels and places to put damp towels and stuff. But a lot of people just never grasped that. They didn't like the food. How come there weren't choices? Well, because you're not on the cruise ship. You're under quarantine. Housekeeping never came into your room. If your wastebasket filled up with stuff, as it does, you set it outside, they'd come by eventually and pick it up, dump it. And they wore hazmat suits too. They had the robes and the masks on. They weren't in the full-blown hazmat suits, but even housekeeping, the food people, housekeeping, everybody was wearing those, looks like paper robes and masks that you see. They did keep us supplied with masks because you could not leave the room without it. You were allowed to leave your room, go down to the common areas, and you could walk around the perimeter of the hotel. There were 2 ways you could go, left or right. One went further than the other if you walked around there. It was surrounded by about a 3-foot high chain link fence, temporary chain link fence. And on the other side, there were the typical black SUVs with 8 home security people in there. The first day or two after that, I called over to one of the guys and said, hey, if I gave you an extra $5, would you get me a pizza? And he said, no, but for $5, I'll let you smell the one I'm eating. And it's like, ugh. But every day we'd go by and say hi to them and, what's new and that kind of stuff. And like I said, we got to know the public health service people there. There was Monica, Kelsey, Mike Simpson, a number of other people, very helpful, very friendly. And like I said, if you treated them nice, they treated you nice because, they were doing the best and we were doing what we had to do. They would, occasionally say, oh, well, here, you probably need another roll of toilet paper. We had no idea people were running on toilet paper like they were. So we got a roll about every other day, which we ended up bringing home because by then we had heard that people were running out of toilet paper, and we had no idea what we had. And plus, like the ship told us when we were getting off the ship, make sure you take everything with you because everything else in the room will be destroyed, which only makes sense because they don't have to worry about sanitizing it. Just throw it away and refurbish the place when it gets back. So we assumed they would do similar to that at the hotel, not knowing if anybody was infected or not. So we brought the toilet paper home with us. That gave us a little boost up. So that helped. Let's see what else. So we were allowed to walk around the area, as I was saying. And you could see eventually where there was ruts worn in the lawn and stuff where people were just walking. You could walk over to the sidewalk, which would take you around, and there were stands you could sit in if you wanted to. They had smoking benches where people could smoke. And quite frankly, there were some people who just didn't get it. You know, we were given masks and they were walking around the hall with it up on their hat and everything else. And to their credit, they also asked, Princess called probably maybe 3 times a week while we were there. They checked, see how things were doing and everything else. They were very nice about everything. They credited us all the money we spent on the cruise, which meant the lodging, wine, drinks. Judy bought some things at their little store there, toiletries and stuff we had forgotten and whatnot. They comped all of that and refunded it, which means they even bought the little bottle of vodka that Judy bought. Anyway, and then they said, whatever your cost was for this cruise, we will credit that for a future cruise. So if we spent $2,000 a piece to go on this cruise, then they gave us that $2,000 back, and they also gave us $2,000 on a future cruise, which we thought was fantastic because, quite frankly, if you read the fine print on the ticket, it says acts of God or whatever. So I mean, if you're destined to go from here to Hawaii and there's a typhoon, all bets are off. We save the ship and we're good. So we felt Princess did a great job taking care of us.
We're almost out of time.
They did offer to test us. Okay, they did offer to test us. We turned it down because they said, if you take the test and the results aren't back by the time you're scheduled to leave, you will not be allowed to leave. And we said, well, there's that. Plus, suppose they test us on Tuesday, and on Wednesday, somebody gets in the elevator, takes his mask off and coughs. We may catch it then, and the first test is not valid. So we bailed on that. So they had it worked out pretty well. When it came time to leave, they had told us, stay in your room, we'll come and knock on your door. And of course, people can't follow directions there. So a lot of people just bailed out and went down to the lobby, you know. And we were fortunate, we had some friends come by to pick us up at a metro station that wasn't being used parking lot. So we were fortunate that we didn't pay for Uber. Some people took the bus ride back to San Francisco because they parked their cars there. They had to go pick them up. Some of the people on the ship got sent to Miramar down in San Diego. They had to fly down there and fly back. They footed the bill, but Princess reimbursed them for it, as I understand. Like I said, we were fortunate that we had some friends pick us up. We didn't have to get Uber or anything else. And once we got out of there to come home, it was pretty smooth sailing. All in all, not a real good thing, but it could have been so much worse. I mean, the accommodations were nice, the food was acceptable, and everybody there was trying to do their best. We came into contact with CDC, DMAT, whatever the initials are, the United States Public Health Service. All those people were very nice and tried to do the best they could. Most of them rotated out before we did because they were there for 2 weeks. We were there for like 15 days, and they'd already been there 2 or 3 days before we got there. So the last 3 days, we got other people. We did write thank you notes and stuck them on our door for all those people, appreciating what they had to go through and give up to help us. We joke it was like having a 2-week vacation, except the second week, or a 4-week vacation, except this last 2 weeks we couldn't really go anywhere. There were no excursions or anything else. But we got fed 3 times a day, and our big thing was our dogs.
Thanks, Mike. I'm afraid Zoom is going to cut us off because we only have 30 minutes. But thank you so much for that. And I will get the link as soon as possible and send it out to everybody.
Okay.
Okay.
Thought it could be of amusement to somebody. And if you have any questions, you probably, if you're in the class, you definitely have my email address. Feel free to send them and I'll answer them as best I can. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, my pleasure. Thank you for setting up. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.